Welcome back to some more 7th grade Bible. I'm your host, Mr. Epley. You know me, right? Okay, let's get on into 7.3, shall we? All right, you guys can stop laughing now. I know I made a funny face. By the way, more than welcome to make some memes of my faces. It's kind of funny. I'm looking at like the YouTube page, and a lot of the thumbnails that I've got going on through here, pretty funny to look at. I make a lot of faces. I know. Okay, so meme it up. I don't care. You got the crying Jordan in the background. You can play with that as well. See, he's right there. And you're more than welcome to play with that. I don't do whatever you do. All right, but we have digressed. So 7.3, page 230 is where we're at. So we fast forwarded a little bit in Israel's history. We've been talking about Isaiah. Our last couple lessons, Isaiah said that the people of Israel were going to get taken away. And of course, remember, Israel is the northern kingdom. You have Israel to the north, Judah to the south. Well, we fast forwarded to the point where Israel is taken. The Syrians come in, right? 722, the kingdom of Assyria, they come in and they destroy the northern kingdom. They besiege the city of Samaria, and for 3 years, by the way, 3-year siege, wow. And then Samaria falls and they deport Israel to other lands, and they go several different places. In fact, even today, we don't know the Israelite people today, the people that live in Israel, we don't know who came from what tribe because when they were destroyed, when they were separated, we don't know where they came from. So right now, Israel's defeated. It's gone. There is no people living in Israel. There is wide open land. Now, God does allow people to come back, and we'll talk about that as we go on, because God already promised that to begin with. But it's kind of interesting, actually. If you go to 2 Kings chapter 17, because I need to go there as well. 2 Kings 17, to look at something pretty cool. So God tells them that, hey, you're going to be destroyed, going to remove you from the land, and make it to where you guys cannot live there anymore. So the people that leave are the Israelites. Well, the king of Assyria, he wants to repopulate the land. So he brings in some people from Babylon. And when he does, which was the capital there, he brings people from Babylon and from Cutha there. I'm in 1 Kings 17, verse 24. And from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Seraphim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. So there's no longer Israelites living in Israel, right? God had them expelled. And now they have people that have come in. Well, take a look at verse 25. It's pretty interesting to see this. And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there that they feared not the Lord. Right, these people from Babylon, from other areas, they didn't fear God. And obviously they didn't. They weren't Israelites. They're like, whatever, this God guy, whatever. Well, look what God does as a result. Verse 25, they feared not the Lord. So the second part of that verse. Therefore the Lord sent lions among them, which slew some of them. What? God took some lions and went and killed these people because they didn't follow after God. It's an interesting note because even though the Israelites weren't living in the promised land, God was still protecting, or I guess keeping, the promised land. It's kind of interesting to see that even when the land, or even when the people aren't there, the land was still protected by God. Well, you go through, that was in, 722, by the way, 722 BC. That is when Samaria falls. And then when Israel falls. Well, now Judah is also under threat of being taken over. And the king at the time is the king by the name of Hezekiah. We talked about him a little bit. Hezekiah was a good king, wasn't he? Reigned when he was 8 years old. In fact, the Bible talks about in 2 Kings 18 that this king, Hezekiah, trusted in the Lord so that after him was none like him among all the kings of Judah, nor any that were before him. What that means is that Hezekiah was a king that followed God better than any other king of Judah. None other followed God like Hezekiah did. That's pretty awesome to say, isn't it? It's saying, out of all the kings of Judah, this guy was the most spiritual king around. What an awesome thing to be told about you. Much better, right, than like Jeroboam. right, that caused Israel to sin. We're much better than Ahab, that said there was no other king as wicked as he. But this guy had it for the good, right? There was no other king as good as he was. And Hezekiah, though, has some problems. Hezekiah is being threatened. And this was actually, I believe it was the same year. Let me see. I think it was the same year. But the same time there that Israel is being taken away, Judah is also having some threat. And the threat is coming from a people called the Rapshakeh. All right. It's actually, I believe it's a person. It's either a person or a group of people. Anyway, so these Rapshakeh people are coming in and they want to destroy the people of Judah. So in response, Hezekiah is going to give them some gold. He says, here, take some monies. Well, the Rapshakeh don't want it. In fact, you see on it is page 244, but 2 Kings 18, verse 16, he actually takes gold from the temple, gives it to the king of Assyria to try to get him off their back. Well, this doesn't work. They're like, sure, thanks for the gold, but we're still coming after you to destroy you. So Hezekiah, he says, hey, what do I do here? Well, what do I do? And right now, there are people that are surrounding the city, and they are going to destroy the Judah people of Judah. And Hezekiah is flat out of options, right? He has nowhere to go. He has nobody to turn to. Israel's destroyed. And the king, by the way, of Assyria right now is the guy by the name of Sennacherib. That's his name. And so Sennacherib has his Assyrians and the Rapshakeh around the people of Judah, and ready to destroy them. And in fact, it's kind of interesting. The Rapshakeh almost pulls a Goliath move and steps out and starts calling out the God of the Israelites. And you can see in your book 244 to 245. I'm sorry, I'm telling you the wrong page. I'm looking at the wrong page. Page 230 is where we should be. I'm sorry. Page 230. That would help you out a lot. 7.3, page 230. I'm looking at my pages. Remember, my pages are different than your pages. That's on me. That's my one mistake for the year. All right, you can mark that down. And so page 230 and 231 is where we're at. Anywho, the Rapshakeh comes out and he starts just bashing God. And in fact, he comes out and starts bashing Hezekiah. And he tells, you can see, it says, this is the Rapshakeh, neither let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will surely deliver us, and the city shall not be delivered into the hand of the king of Assyria. Hath any of the gods of the nations delivered at all his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? So what he's saying is, he says, look, guys, don't listen to Hezekiah. Hezekiah is going to say, guys, pray to God. God will protect us. He will save our city from being destroyed by the Assyrians. And he comes in and says, has any other God in any other history time protected anybody from the king of Assyria? He goes on. Where were the gods of Hamath or of Arpad? Where are the gods of Seraphim, of Hena, of Iva? Have they delivered Samaria out of mine hand? Who are they among all the gods of the countries that have delivered their country out of mine hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem out of my hand? He says, what's the difference between the Lord God and any of those gods? Right? All of those cities fell. Jerusalem is going to fall as well. Which, remember, Jerusalem, capital city of Judah. And he is just bashing God, saying God's not going to do anything. Whatever. Right? Good luck. Right? Good luck praying to him to save you. Well, he has messed up by saying that right there. Because Hezekiah looks to the prophet. And he looks to God. He looks to the prophet. The prophet Isaiah, by the way, is who's here. And he goes to Isaiah and he says, Isaiah, I need some help from God. I need you to pray. I need you to see what God's got to say. So you look on page 231. It says there, the prophet Isaiah comes back to him and says, pray. This is Isaiah talking to Hezekiah. He says, here's what you need to do, Hezekiah. Pray, and the Lord may retaliate against Assyria for its mocking. So Hezekiah goes, and immediately, by the way, goes to God and says, God, you've asked for me to pray to you for salvation. You've asked me to pray for you to save us from this enemy. Here I am. And he prays to him. He asks him to deliver them. He asks them to be able to save them and to be able to remove this army from in front of them. So 2 Kings 19 is where this story is at here. Let's see. 2 Kings 19, verse 15, it says, And Hezekiah prayed before the Lord and said, O Lord God of Israel, which dwellest between the cherubim, thou art the Lord, thou art the God, even thou alone of all the kingdoms of the earth, thou hast made heaven and earth. Lord, bow down thine ear and hear. Open, Lord, thine eyes and see, and hear the words of Sennacherib, which hath sent him to reproach the living God. Of a truth, Lord, the kings of Assyria have destroyed the nations of the land. They have cast the gods into the fire. He goes through and he starts praying to him there and continues on. Let's see. There you go. So you go down to verse 32. So from verse 15 of 2 Kings 19, so 2 Kings 19:15, down through 2 Kings 19, where are we at there? 31. That's Hezekiah's prayer. Hezekiah says, hey, here it is to God. He pleads with God to deliver them. So let's see God's answer. Verse 32. Therefore, thus saith the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, He shall not come into this city, neither shoot an arrow there, nor come before it with shield, nor cast a bank against it. By the way that he came, by the same shall he return, and shall not come into this city, saith the Lord. For I will defend the city to save it for mine own sake and for my servant David's sake. So God says, guess what, Hezekiah? I'm going to save the city. All right, he's going to pull a Batman, right? He's going to save this city, all right? And he's going to save it for his servant David's sake. Because remember, he promised David that there would always be a remnant of people in Israel. So he says, hey, there you go. I'm going to save it there. So let's take a look. Verse 35. Let's see how God does this. And it came to pass that night that the angel of the Lord went out and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. That's 185,000. You say 185,000 what? 185,000 Assyrian troops. 185,000. It says there, and when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. God sent the angel of the Lord. He goes through, kills 185,000 Assyrian troops. Wipes them out. Just like that. Boom, they're gone, dead. So let's see what happens in verse 36. By the way, this all happens with Judah not lifting a finger. Right? The people in Jerusalem, they just sat there. All it took was prayer. Look at the power of prayer, by the way. Isn't that awesome? That God will listen to the prayer. Right? The Bible talks about the effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Now, there's two conditions to that. First off, the effectual, fervent prayer. You've got to be praying a lot. You've got to be serious about it. Of a righteous man, that's the second thing. You've got to be in communion with God. You got to be the right way. But those two things, the Bible talks about, the effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. That means it gets a lot done. It gets a lot accomplished. Well, I'd like to say Hezekiah would be a pretty righteous man, would you not? He prayed, 185,000 troops died. That's some serious power right there. That is a lot of power indeed. Gabriel would like to have that kind of power in his Yu-Gi-Oh battles. He better kill 185,000 people, right, Gabe? Thanks. And so you go through, and then, catch this, because it's not done yet. Verse 36. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed and went and returned and dwelt at Nineveh. Just like God said. God said the same place he came in, he will return. And you say, what? Why didn't God kill Sennacherib right then and there? Why didn't he just finish him off? Why didn't he just kill him with the rest of his troops? Because God has an even better, I guess you could say, but even a more interesting way to do that. So take a look at verse 37. It came to pass, this is about Sennacherib here. It came to pass as he was worshiping in the house of Nishrosh, his god. So he's in there, he's in his palace, in his temple, whatever, worshiping, that Adramelech and Sharezer, his sons, smote him with the sword. His own two sons come into his temple while he's worshiping, and they kill him. They kill Sennacherib. All because, and one of the main reasons why is because he was mocking God. He was mocking the God of Israel, saying, whatever, right? He's not going to do anything. And he comes through, and so God has brought a serious work for these people of Judah, for the people of Jerusalem. He's killed 185,000. He killed the king of Assyria himself. And Assyria, they had said stuff, Assyria says, I'm so powerful, I dried up the Nile with my foot, like stomping all the water out of a puddle. Well, 1 Kings 19:25, this was also the Lord here as well. Hast thou not heard long ago how I have done it? And of ancient times that I have formed it. Now have I brought it to pass that thou shouldest be to lay waste fenced cities into ruinous heaps. And it talks about there just the idea of that God says, whatever he says is going to be done. God chose to weaken one of the most powerful armies on the face of the planet at this time. And the crazy thing is, now that those 185,000 were killed, Assyria was wide open for destruction. And other countries come in, and they actually attack Assyria because they have no more power left because they lost a lot of their people. Well, you go through, and this was a great work, right, for Hezekiah. Hezekiah is on the mountaintop spiritually, if you will. Remember Elijah, when Elijah was on the mountaintop spiritually? He defeated the prophets of Baal. He had called a thunderstorm there. He had a wonderful one day. Then remember Jezebel the next day comes out and says, I'm going to kill you. And he's like, oh, and he runs for his life, right? He's scared for his life. For Hezekiah, he doesn't have that mountaintop experience and then that valley experience quite yet. He's on that mountaintop experience, right? He just prayed, 185,000 wiped out. Sennacherib wiped out. Well, you pick up in chapter 20 of 2 Kings 20. Yeah, 2 Kings 20. And Hezekiah has another problem. Isaiah comes to him and he says, hey, get your house in order. You're sick. You're going to die. And we talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago, but remember Hezekiah comes in and he says, he prays to God, I beseech thee, Lord, that you'll add me life. And you remember God gives him life. He gives him 15 more years to Hezekiah's life because he prayed and asked. God heard Hezekiah's prayer yet again. He was able to move the mind of God, if you will. He was able to move the hand of God for a second time. Hezekiah had a lot of power in his life. He was a very powerful man, spiritually speaking. Now, Hezekiah goes on, and I think we talked about it a little bit, but Hezekiah goes on, after he gets his 15 years, he doesn't live the best life. In fact, he goes out, lives in some wickedness, and he basically boasts about what he's done and the things that he has accomplished, and he forgets about God and what God has done for him. And he doesn't end his life the best way. But he still was able to get a hold of God two times in a row, and have a life-changing scenario. I think sometimes we think prayer isn't that big. Prayer is meant for, the little things or the simple things. Right? Maybe you've ever been around, maybe your younger brothers or sisters, or maybe when you were younger, and they say, what's some prayer requests for you? Maybe you're sitting in maybe like a children's church or junior church or something, and somebody raises their hand and they say, pray for my dog, they're sick. And in our mind we think, what? You're praying for your dog to be better? Did you not even know that dogs don't even go to heaven, contrary to the movies? I mean, you think about that. Think about the idea that sometimes, especially young children like this, that they have the smallest prayer request or the weirdest prayer request sometimes. Right? Pray for, like I said, that's the one that's coming to mind because I've heard that a couple times in junior church. Pray for my dog because they're sick. But the faith of that child, we can look at that and laugh at them and be like, whatevs, right? Big deal. But we could look at that and we could take a lesson from that. Because the Bible says if you have faith like the grain of a mustard seed, right? Faith of a grain of mustard seed, you could move mountains. Now, not literally mountains, but what that verse implies is that a limited amount of faith in God can produce results. A large amount of faith in God can produce significant results. Hezekiah killed 185,000 through a prayer. Hezekiah added 15 years to his life from a prayer. The question is, what can we do in our life because of prayer? You say, oh, prayer, whatever. Right? Something I do before I eat my food, something we do at church when I'm prompted to, something I do in class when my teacher tells me to. That's about all I do with prayer. If that's all you do with prayer, that's all the results you'll see from prayer. Prayer is like anything else. The more you put into it, the more you get out of it. The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. There's some awesome stories about prayer in the Bible. Hezekiah did 2 things through prayer. Killed 185,000, added 15 years to his life. You know, if Hezekiah would have been like, I don't think prayer is going to work right now, Isaiah. There's 185,000 people out there. We would not be talking about Hezekiah the same way, would we? But Hezekiah chose to trust God, which we've got to do. Hezekiah chose to be in the right relationship with God, which we must do. Hezekiah chose to follow God. And because of all those things, he was faithful to God. He chose to follow after him. God chose to bless him, both with years and with victories. And if we can do the same, God will give us the same results. But that's all for 7.3. Pick up with you on the morrow.